So today we have an S542 ZF unit. This is found in your mid-80s through late 90s Ford 3/4 and 1 ton. This particular one came out from a 7.3 liter diesel. I've been asked many times on my social media to show how these come apart, so we're going to go ahead and do that today. This is a 2-wheel drive version. So in the back there is a bolted on yoke that comes off, connects to your drive shaft. The 4-wheel drive version will look exactly like this, except it'll come out to a round flange with 6 bolts around it. So other than that, and the shape of the output shaft, the unit inside for this particular model is the same. We're talking about diesel 2-wheel drive versus diesel 4-wheel drive. The gas motors have a little bit different dimensioning to it, but the procedures to take it apart are the same. The first thing you want to do there are 3 freeze-out plugs across the top. That's what gives your detent for your rails and helps hold your shift rails in line in gear once you shift. Also helps keep it in neutral when it's in neutral. So there's a freeze-out plug which looks like this, and a long spring which looks like this. There's 3 of them. So I already have those out. I didn't want to waste too much time on here with fighting to get them out. They can be difficult, sometimes they're easy. These weren't too bad. The easiest way to get them out is knock it from the side with a small roll pin punch like this. Knock it along the edge and get it to spin in the bore like this, upside down, and then grab it with a pair of dikes and pull it out, or wire cutters, grab it and pull it out. If you can't get that to happen, take the roll pin punch and punch a hole in it like I did here. Put a pick in it, a 90-degree pick, something that's not going to snap, something with a little bit of strength to it, or even a screwdriver that you bend. Get it in there and pop this plug out and get the spring out. Try not to damage the spring. Sometimes it happens that you do, and you'll need to replace these. It's a little bit tough. It would have been nice if this was a set screw or something like that to bolt in, but these are just freeze-out plugs knocked in. You're going to pull them out, get them out of your way, and then you're ready to proceed. This is aluminum. And there's a steel shifter that goes in here with brass pucks and plastic pieces that go inside, and they can actually wear this out. So I'm just feeling to make sure there's no grooves or wear marks. It's a 13mm socket. We're going to grab that and go ahead and take that off. When you're taking this off, there's 8 of them. We want to make sure that we don't drop the spring and clip that's inside of here when we do so. I'll show you in just a moment when I get to it. This is off. Here's your spring and retainer. This is what locks you out so you don't go from 5th accidentally into reverse when you're coming out of 5th gear. Next, you're going to pull all of the 13mm bolts out from around the back housing. Okay, make sure we have them all out. All 17 are out. Always double check, make sure they're all out. You don't want to try and separate it and still have a bolt in there. And they're usually pretty dirty. You don't want to have an extra one still in there and fight the case trying to get it apart, and it's not going to come apart with that extra bolt in there. So the last one we're going to take apart before we can separate the cases. We have these Allen bolts. There's 2 of them. I'm going to leave the back one in for now, the one that's connected into the tail housing. That'll keep the idler in line while I'm trying to pull the front case off, so I'm not fighting it. Just going to take the front one out. Now that we have that out, we'll go ahead and give it a few taps around the case. You'll hear the sound change. Just tap it. Don't slam it. Just trying to break that mechanical adhesion between the silicone and the cases. You'll hear the noise actually change. If I have to hammer on it, I'll use a block of wood so I'm not hitting directly on the aluminum case. We're going to go ahead and pop that case off. If you have a second set of hands, now is the time you want to use them. Especially when you go to drop the case back on later. There's an input seal inside here, and if you don't get it correctly, you can roll that seal, and the last thing you want to do is hoop this heavy trans back up in the vehicle and find out that you didn't seat the front case properly. You rolled the input seal and you have fluid pissing out the front. That's not going to let anyone be happy at all. So be very careful on that. Right now, popping it off is a little less important because we're going to be changing the seal anyway. So right now we're just fighting to get this case off. Once you get the front case off, you can go ahead and put that to the side. The input shaft will tip and come right out. A lot of times it falls off as you're on the bench and rocking everything apart. The 4-wheel drive is a little easier to use because you can set it up on some blocks of wood or something and lift the case straight up and off. That's usually how we do it. I used to have a piece for here. I have to take a look. I do have a jig fixture that was from ZF, and I'm going to use that when I reassemble to hold the case sturdy and straight so I can drop the front case on and not damage that input seal. So at this point we have the ring. I can tell right away this input's going to need to be replaced. You're looking at your synchronizer teeth. You're going to look at the tip. These are all things that go wrong on these. If the pocket bearing is good. But on this one, a lot of times what happens, these rings are very hard from ZF, and even the aftermarket ones are very hard. And what happens is you'll get heat marks from the transfer of material and from the friction will create heat marks on the cone, and these hard rings can actually wear out. This is one of the rare transmissions where the cones will actually wear out on the gearbox itself. So take a look at that. That's going to be replaced. We're going to go back to this other Allen socket. It is a 6mm. We'll go ahead and get that second one out, which is in the tail housing, or the extension, however you want to call it. Get that bolt out, take this rod out, and then the idler will come out. The idler, you have your idler shaft with 2 caged needle roller bearings and the idler shaft. This is what takes the motion from the main shaft and spins through the input shaft, transfers the torque down through the counter, over, and it spins the 3rd gear to then spin the output shaft in the reverse direction. That's what the 3rd gear is needed for reverse. So once that's out, we have this upper ship rail, which should theoretically come right out. Let me stand it up for you. You're going to stand it up in this position. I like to put a rag or something underneath the cluster, between the bench and the cluster, so you don't have the gear digging into the bench. The upper rail, if everything is lined up properly, should come right out like that. So this is your upper shift rail. This is where the cup of your shifter will go down into. You take that off. Now we're going to have 3 Allen head bolts. They are 5mm. This unit is all metric. This is a German unit. Everything is metric other than the bolts which hold the PTO covers on. Those are 9/16 heads. Other than that, all the threads, all of the heads on everything else in this unit are metric. Okay, so go ahead and loosen these 3 up. 3 5mm. Get that loose. Go ahead and get them out. Part. Once you get to that part. So the rear seal is nowhere in contact, so you don't have to worry about that. And we're going to change the rear seal anyway. So what just happened didn't damage anything. Once you have those 3 bolts for the plate, that's what keeps the forks and rails in line. Once you have those 3 bolts out, the whole thing can just come apart and separate the spools. You have your main shaft, your counter shaft, and these are all your forks and rails. So this is the 3/4 fork. This is your 1/2 fork for first and second. And this is your 5th and reverse fork. And typical with this unit, you will need all 3 forks almost every time. So almost every time you build one of these, you're going to need 3 forks. You're going to need 3 synchronizer assemblies. This particular gearbox has a bushing in the back because it does not have a speedometer. Speedometer picks up somewhere else in the vehicle, so it does not have a mechanical speedometer or an electronic speedometer off the back of the output shaft, so it just has a spacer bushing in the back. These are your synchronizer assemblies. You have the 1/2 right here. You have your 5th in reverse over here, and your 3rd and 4th over here. So the next step from here is to take apart the main shaft. This is where you're going to need a bearing separator, which looks like this. And you'll need a hydraulic press. These are very tight. ZF products are all super tight. Perfect example also, if you're in a situation where you need to change the head gear or the 5th gear off of your cluster, okay? There's a bearing and then a snap ring, and then these are pressed on, but it's a super tight interference fit. There's no splines. It's just super, super tight. So you have to get, this one is a 20-ton press, and sometimes it's a little hairy, you know, and a little scary pressing that off, but this will come off. So next step would be, you're going to go ahead and take this. If you don't have the bearing separator and a hydraulic press, you're going to need to bring this to your local mechanic shop or somewhere who has it, a machine shop, someplace like that, who can press it apart for you. You're going to want to press off this section here. Then there's a snap ring. Then you can press off reverse, flip it over, 3rd gear, 2nd gear. Then there's another snap ring underneath there. There's also a snap ring in the front. So don't try to press everything in one shot. Go section at a time, then take the snap rings off and press it all apart. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much how to take apart an S542 ZF 5-speed from a Ford full-size pickup. If you have an S547 unit, which is very similar to this, it's the same procedure. Thanks a lot for watching. If you could, please like and subscribe.